I had promised myself to go on this incredibly beautiful journey on a photography expedition to capture the mighty and savor the tranquil. The mountains have called. This was not the first time I was hiking in the mountains of Nepal. I had done the Everest Base Camp trek in 2007 and was captivated by the grandeur of these mighty mountains. That's when I had promised myself I would be back. But this time it would be on a proper photo expedition. Ashok Mansoor, my longtime mentor, was accompanying me on this trek. Puru, from above the Himalayas, was helping us set up the logistics on the ground. So we are all set, departing to Lukla at 2 a.m. Ours is hopefully the first flight out, and hope it doesn't get rescheduled due to bad weather. Our Himalayan adventure began with a 4-hour drive out of Kathmandu to a small airport called Ramechhap for a 15-minute flight to Lukla, reputed to be the most dangerous airport in the world. After safely landing in Lukla, we started our 16-day hike, climbing slowly into the thin air of the Everest Sagarmatha National Park. We started at an altitude of 2,800 meters at Lukla, proceeding towards Namche Bazaar, Gokyo and Tengboche before returning back. The idea was to capture and photo document the beauty of this place, including the mighty Mt Everest, from a vantage point few people have ever seen. So begins our Everest adventure. Puru had organized a guide and a porter to help us on this journey. And our first major stop was Namche Bazaar. Day 2 has started with quite a flurry of activity. Today we are headed to Namche Bazaar. Well, you see this mighty valley and the mountain there, right? Namche Bazaar is on the other side and we have to cross this now. One of the prominent landmarks on this route is the scarily high Tenzing Bridge, suspended over the Dudh Koshi River. This bridge also marked our entry into the 3,000 meter zone, and the view from the bridge was quite a sight. Naam? Tuche?
Nam
Tatsatsena. Once in Namche Bazaar, trekkers are advised to spend at least 2 nights as a part of the acclimatization process. This involved trekking up to the Tenzing Memorial, where I got my first view of Mt Everest on this trip, and a visit to the Everest View Hotel, renowned for its beautiful views of Everest and its delicious hot tea. Masala chai. An interesting side journey we did that day was our hike to Kumjung, a sleepy little town with a mighty legend.
Se to ala, se to ala, se tamang se.
The Monastery here houses the rare and exotic Yeti skull
that's kept for display. Of course, the monastery is also incredibly beautiful, just like its people.
So let me tell you the story of one of the famous British mountaineers whose name has been immortalized in Everest journals. This was George Lee Mallory. Now we all know the story of Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary, who were the first, whom we all know as the first people to climb up and down Mount Everest, right? But George Lee Mallory was before Sir Tenzing Norgay and Edmund Hillary, and that he climbed up, but unfortunately he couldn't survive the climb, and he perished on top of the mountain without coming down. So in documentation's perspective, he probably climbed Mount Everest before Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay, but it's just that he didn't make it out alive to be the first documented person to climb up and down a mountain, or rather the world's biggest mountain. The famous stupa that's quite iconic in this location, and it was also featured in the movie Everest, which featured the famous Josh Brolin, in other words Thanos, that we all know of.
After acclimatization in Namche for 2 days, we were now headed higher, and things would only get tougher.
Okay, so probably this is been the toughest day so far, more tougher than climbing up into Namche Bazaar. Maybe also because of the bad breakfast I had. Didn't eat much, wasn't feeling hungry. So we are now on the Gokyo trail. We've separated from the Everest trail and we are going towards Gokyo. It's going to be all barren, windy and cold.
As we started gaining altitude, frozen waterfalls and icy conditions were becoming common.
Finally reached the lodge in Dole. As you can see, it's snowing outside and it's a winter wonderland right now. On the way to Macherno before we stop for the night. It's a relatively short trek, maybe for 4 hours from our last camp.
We were now 5 days into the trek and were getting closer to our first major pit stop, Gokyo.
Well, finally made it to Gokyo. This is the first lake. Gokyo is known to have 6 lakes and this is the first of those 6. We will be staying at lake 3. So we have one more lake to pass and it gets more and more beautiful from here. As you can see, amazing place.
Gokyo is a small village located on the banks of a beautiful glacial lake, Dudh Pokri. The beauty of its turquoise blue waters surrounded by the mighty Himalayan mountains is beyond compare. We would spend 3 nights here exploring various opportunities to photograph this magical place.
Okay, so it's about 10:30 evening and the temperature is around minus 20 degrees and I'm out here trying to make some images of these beautiful mountains in this resplendent moonlight. We have an almost full moon, but the moonlight is bathing the entire mountains in a silvery glow, and that's what I have hoped to capture. Let's see how it comes out.
A day's hike from Gokyo is the Scoundrel's View. Close to the Tibetan border, this place offers unrivaled views of Mount Everest. Being able to see the world's highest mountain right from its base to the peak is quite a unique experience. But the beauty of this place was not just limited to Mount Everest. I was so captivated by the mighty attitude of these mountains that I felt truly insignificant. This was the land of giants after all.
Continuing with George Mallory's story, George Lee Mallory was a part of 3 British expeditions between 1921 and 1924 to conquer the world's biggest mountain. But as expedition folklore dictates, Mallory and one of his companions, Andrew Irvine, disappeared on the final summit day. Now we don't know for certain if Mallory and Irvine actually summited the mountain in 1924. But we do know one thing, that he was carrying a pocket camera. And if he would have summited, he would have definitely taken a picture of him on top of the summit. However, in the early 2000s, Mallory's body was discovered, but strangely enough, there was no camera found on his person. So the mystery of Mallory summiting Everest remained unanswered. Unfortunately, Irvine's body has never been found. And it's all a part of the mountain's folklore now.
After being humbled by the giants at Gokyo, it was time to move on. Our next stop was the Dawa Choling Monastery of Tengboche. Wrapped with panoramic views of Everest, Nuptse, Lhotse, Amadablam and Tamserku, this place is a beautiful and sacred jewel in the Tibetan religion. With its bright red walls and cheerful yellows, the Gompa is a photographer's delight. Its stark beauty also woke the latent artist in me, sketching its beautiful features and the landscape. We stayed in Tengboche for 3 nights, soaking in its culture, before climbing down to Lukla to mark the end of our incredible adventure.
Well, 2 weeks of hard trekking, sub-zero temperatures and countless hours of walking up, down, up. I have finally finished the Gokyo trek and ready to exit out of the Sagarmatha National Park. We still are a day away from Lukla to board the flight back to Kathmandu, but this marks the end of Sagarmatha National Park and its amazing inhabitants.